I was going to talk about COP, however, because it was sad moments seeing Sharma yesterday. Talk about drama Sharma as he was making those speeches. And it's gone on for 2 weeks, so we're going to be turning hot air into action. That was the whole idea. And what I really felt very sad about it was very emotional pleas from everybody from David Attenborough to various nations saying, look, we are on death's door. We implore you to help for the sake, not of us, not for our generation, but we're looking after this planet for the children. And so you start looking at people holding up pictures of their grandchildren, so on and so forth, in 40 years' time. And so what they needed to do is look at that sort of side. And what happened at the last minute, as you said in your report, is they basically they watered down the language. And it's going from down but not out, is what they say.
And Alex Sharma was quite emotional, wasn't he, when he made that? And he actually ended up apologising to everyone for watering down the deal on coal.
Yes, absolutely. When they're talking about the idea was, coal, they're naming the biggest criminal, if you like, in all of this about climate change. We need to get rid of coal. That has to be that sort of principle. But there's obviously economic effects of that. And the nations, such as India, sort of turn around and say, well, hang about, yes, we understand we've got to do something about it, but there's an economic consequence. And unless you can help us out and we look at that economic consequence, we're going to have major problems.
That's fair enough, isn't it, really?
It's absolutely a fair point. And you have to go hand in hand. And this is where we talk about the poorest nations in the world are the ones who are suffering the most from the richest nations who are polluting the atmosphere. So that's where, when they're talking about climate change and that sort of thing, people get very convoluted and you get lost in all the jargon. And one of the things I love to do is get rid of jargon. Because I think that way, you can only get change and affect change if there's a willingness and an understanding that there's the problem. And I think one of the great things, there was a good thing that came out, a number of good things that came out of COP26, is there was a recognition for the first time that the science was right. Because in previous ones, people sort of say, well, hang about, the scientists don't really know what they're talking about. Our scientists say there's not a problem. If you don't recognise the problem, you won't look for solutions. So that was a good thing. The other good thing that happened was actually putting fossil fuel even mentioned in the agreement. That has never happened in the other 20 or 25 COPs, loads of them now. Good COP, bad COP, all sorts of indifferent COPs in between. But that sort of principle is you've got to recognise the problem, because then you can work together for the solution. But there was all sorts of good noises that did come out. So they talked about that. They talked about deforestation. They talked about ending and reversing, methane emissions, dealing with that sort of side. And there was that dramatic moment where, even though the president didn't turn up from China, they still managed to do a deal with China, where they sort of turned around and said, look, together we will work. The two biggest emitters, China and the US, will work to do things about methane and various other things. The devil, however, is in the detail. And what's going to happen over the next year or so, and it will be, and actually carrying on, is that people will then put that into effect. And what I find really interesting is what John Kerry said, is you turn around and say, COP26 in Glasgow was not the destination. It's not the destination, it's not the be-all and end-all. It basically is a step on the journey, and we continue to make that journey. But I felt so sad for the nations who were in tears, and Sharma was in tears as a result of it, because they wanted so much more.